Okay, welcome everyone to today's alumni chat for the Master of Science in Healthcare Leadership, I should say student and alumni chat. We're happy to have everyone joining us today, especially our alums. This is one of the most current students. I get to see some of my favorite people, so I'm really excited about having you all here today and sharing your knowledge and wisdom about our program to prospective students. I'm Sandy Ferretti. I'm the program director for the Master in Science of Healthcare Leadership here at Brown, and I'm a senior advisor for the Critical Challenge projects. Today, we're being joined by several alums. Jackie Ejua, who's a PharmD and is Vice President of Health Transformation Acceleration at Blue Shield of California. Also, alum Paul Fletcher, an MBA and MHL, and he's the head of marketing for new dermatology indications at Sanofi. Pedro Escobar, Dr. Escobar was not able to join us. He texted me right at the last minute to say that he had been called to the operating room. So it's for a patient who was not doing well. So unfortunately, Pedro is not able to join us today. We're also joined by current students and mostly recent current students. Hopefully John O'Brien will be joining us shortly. He's a PharmD and is a senior manager of clinical supply and logistics at Beijing, a pharmaceutical company. John just graduated in May. And so he's a very recent alum, has real recent student experience. We're also joined by Jared Watson, who's a physical therapist and is the center manager for Baylor Scott and White Institute for Rehabilitation, and Jenny McConaughey, who is a senior vice president and chief of staff at MedStar Health, a very large integrated delivery system in Maryland. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your experiences. So I'd like a few more pieces of information here. We're so glad to have all of you join us and know that you have some questions for our panelists. So please use the Q&A link in your menu bar, and you can enter your question. We're going to save those questions for the end of the session and see if we haven't answered them by the time we get there. If not, Susan Coogan is going to be my partner here and help guide through the questions. So today's agenda is the student introductions, which I have already done. We're going to primarily chat with them about their experiences as students in the MHL program and take questions from all of you participating in the webinar. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing so that you have a good view of our panelists. And I'd like to start with asking our alums, Jackie and Paul. Let's start with Jackie. Tell us about your job before you came to MHL and kind of where things have gone since then and what you're doing now. So let's start with Jackie.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So before I came to the program, I was a senior director and I was working in the pharmacy arena. I do have my clinical training is in pharmacy, but I was looking to expand my professional world outside of pharmacy. So I was looking at this program. At the same time, I was looking for other jobs that would expand my understanding of the healthcare industry. So I came out to the program. I literally started a new job 2 weeks after starting the program. I got the job and then I started the program, and 2 weeks later I resumed in a different capacity, and I moved into the implementation of new laws and regulations across the enterprise. So it was really doing two things at the same time: approaching the expansion of my knowledge of the healthcare industry, both academically, so understanding healthcare policy, how the US healthcare system came about, while also in my job, expanding what I was doing outside of the pharmacy arena as well.
Awesome. And Paul?
Hi, Sandy. So nice to see you and all the panelists as well as the prospective students. So I've actually been in the pharmaceutical industry for some time, and as you mentioned in your introduction, I had completed my MBA at Michigan State University some time ago. But as you know, I work in the field of marketing in the pharmaceutical arena, And I'd been with my company, Sanofi, for a number of years. I was a senior director of marketing in dermatology for the United States. And so I was in that role when I had started the program. And what I liked about the program in particular was the focus on healthcare specifically. MBA is much broader in some cases, but I love the focus, and of course my classmates. And sure enough, as you see in all those surveys, within a year after completion of the program, I was promoted head of marketing in the United States for new dermatology indications. And I attribute a great deal of that promotion towards having gone through the rigors of the program at Brown University, because obviously there's very competitive, those spots to achieve, and to differentiate myself, perhaps compared to others who are just as hardworking and just as smart, if not smarter. But it was nice to have completed the program at Brown and be able to leverage that appropriately from the knowledge standpoint and the confidence that came with it. So so I was promoted to a very significant senior leadership role shortly after, within a year of completing the program.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, let's turn to our current students and talk to you a little bit about your motivations for joining the Brown program, and what you are looking to do. Both Jared and Jenny have been in the program for about 6 months, so they're about a third to almost halfway through the program. So, and they just came off an awesome residential program session. So let's start with you, Jared. Why were you looking to do the Brown program, and what's motivating you to go through this program?
Thank you, Sandy, and welcome all the panelists and all the attendees. I was personally motivated just through some junctures of my life. My current corporate structure is a very steep corporate structure in physical therapy, and it's just clinician based from the operational standpoint. And I'm looking to improve my ability to lead and get into more administrative roles, have more responsibility, change careers differently, more prospectively in the HR DEI spaces. And healthcare has a large a void in a lot of departments. Big companies don't have those programs, and I would like to be able to implement and be able to bring stuff of that nature to larger companies and maybe smaller companies in some consulting capacities. So I was using the program to basically give me the knowledge and the tools in the network to basically allow me to transition with confidence. And I feel that more every time that I go through the class and through the different segments and in-person sessions.
Awesome, thank you. And Jenny.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to get Paul and Jackie to find out. I'm going to have questions in chat for how we get through the rest of this and survival. But no, it's been an extraordinary experience thus far, and I would say that what brought me here might be a little bit different. It's probably 2 points. So as Sandy said, I am the Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff for MedStar Health. I work very closely with our corporate executive team and am a member of that team. We are a $6.5 billion not-for-profit organization. We have 30,000 associates. So it is a big operation. And I am in a role where people largely don't tell you what you don't want to hear. So I have sought the program because I really wanted to be an environment that was challenging my thinking, my perspective, and to have that done by smart healthcare professionals who are invested in transforming healthcare. So that's really what brought me here. And so far, it has not disappointed at all. And then I would say the second was the Critical Challenge Project, because it really was an opportunity to focus my efforts coming out of the pandemic on something that I'm passionate about, that I know needs to happen, but that it would hold the accountability to really realize it. So again, just in the spirit of leaving it better than we found it, looking at ways to improve healthcare. And so the Critical Challenge structure really was a big draw as well.
Terrific. All right, let's move on to talking about life in the program. for any of you, and just kind of like give me a signal that you'd like to answer. How, to Jenny's question, how did you manage the workload during the 16-month program? You're all working professionals, busy work-life balance. What strategies have helped you or are helping you, and how realistic, how feasible is this? Jackie.
Yes, so that was one of my concerns, because at the time I was in the program, I graduated in 2017. I had a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old and a full-time job. Like, I just changed jobs. So I was also, I literally had made a career change. I'd gone from working in pharmacy to doing compliance and operational implementation across the enterprise, doing things I didn't really know. So that was that additional brain space I had to create. I worked a schedule that made sense for me. And so it said 16 to 20 hours, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And I needed to have weekends. I needed to spend time with my children. I needed to spend time with my spouse. And I also needed to work. So what I did was a half a day Saturday, that was 4 hours, a half a day Sunday, that made 8 hours. And then I didn't bring work home. I couldn't. So it was 2 hours a day, 4 days a week, plus the 8 hours on the weekend. And that gave me about 16. And so plus or minus 1 or 2 hours was really how I managed my time. So I could still have a little bit of a life, because, you know, later in the afternoon on a Saturday, if you start work at 8, you're done at 12. You could still do stuff with your family, with your friends, and get other things done. That was how I managed the time. I took the train to and from work. I live in the San Francisco Bay. And previously, I would actually walk on the train. It was a 45-minute ride, and I started at the first stop, so I typically would get a seat. And so I did homework on the train as well, on my way to work and on my way back. And that's not part of the 2 hours. So that would give me a little bit, like an extra hour and a half here or there. So I really was very thoughtful and proactive about planning the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think from, remember, my background's more marketing, so I'm always thinking something motivational. And for me, it was actually the very first day. I wasn't aware of this, but it may seem somewhat small, but it was very prominent to me. What the professors and the leadership brought in, they started speaking about the Van Wickle gates and how significant that is. That they only open twice a year, once, convocation, which the newest students have walked through that, but then walking through them on the way out. And I just kept that in the back of my mind throughout, like, what a privilege, and to join those legions before, who had that privilege of walking through those gates. What I personally did was, listen, there's no question it's a rigorous program, and nothing, and I think you would expect that for the caliber of a program at Brown University, the tradition there. But what I personally did was I never looked far ahead. Each week I was focused on, okay, this is my job for the week. And so much so that sometimes I didn't even know what the classes were down the road. Like, I truly didn't. Like, I remember seeing it the first day or so what the curriculum was, but I'm like, okay, the strategy class is first, and I need to do very well in that class, or everything else is irrelevant. So this is what I need to do this week for my homework, and perhaps starting the critical challenge project, and then for work too. What I need to do that week. So I never looked further ahead than that. And it's amazing how 1 week passes, then another, and you get into that routine. And of course, as Jackie alluded to, she worked on the way to work. I didn't have a commute because I live in Boston, and it's just a quick subway ride. But most evenings I did do homework. Like, there's no question about that. And on the weekends. But I also knew in the back of my mind that 18, 19 months, it's an end date, and it's very much worthwhile. And so, and you're surprised that time goes by very, very rapidly. But that was my trick, and it worked well for me. So
Excellent. That's another excellent. Go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to that. That's a really good point Paul made. I didn't look that far ahead. I knew what was due this week, the next week, and if it was a big paper, maybe I knew what was due in 2 weeks. And then I had my cohort. You have people who keep you accountable, and you find strength in your cohort. in your group. So within that group, there were folks who were like project managers, and they told me what was coming. So we all kind of leaned into each other. Those of us who were really short-sighted in terms of what had to be done, because looking at a huge list of to-dos was a little bit overwhelming. And those people who are a lot more planful in the future, and they would say, you know, this is coming up. And I'd say, oh, really? I haven't looked that far ahead. So,
Jackie's onto that because listen, the program itself can be, look, if you look at it face value, it can be a bit daunting because there's major classes you're taking, and it's at the graduate level at Brown, like one of the top universities in the entire world. So, and I was mindful of that. So to tag on to what Jackie was saying, but it was very deliberate strategy because you don't want to get overwhelmed. But if you find you break it into piecemeal, like, yeah, I can nail this assignment and submit that onto what was it, Canvas, I think. I sort of forgot now, but you know, in the Canvas, I know Jared and Jenny can speak to that. But yeah, you're done. Boom, check. It's done. You ace it. You move on. And then, you know, the bigger projects, the papers, they take some time, maybe on the weekends, a little bit more when you have to really think it through. So there's a strategy to it. But I think that seems to be a common theme of success, is just 1 week at a time, one assignment at a time. And boy, it does go by quickly.
Jenny or Jared, do either of you have some thoughts on what you're experiencing right now?
I was just going to say that I think that with every class, I've found there's a little bit of a cadence, right? So when you shift the class, you kind of have to adjust your cadence a little bit, like, okay, and if you have a strength, so for many people entering the program, maybe they haven't been writing papers for a long time, or maybe they haven't done economics because they've been in the medical field. I feel like the team meets you where you are, and they're there for you if you reach out to them proactively to provide whatever support and that you might need, whether it's writing instruction or whether it's different things. So each class definitely has a little bit of a different cadence, but once you settle in, then I think you tend to get into a rhythm of what works for you. Although I have to say, Jackie's time management, it sounds extraordinary that she's had it plotted per day, because I have not figured that time management out, and I have 3 children myself. So, but it has worked. It has worked. And I found that the faculty has been incredibly agreeable in terms of, or Sandy, in some instances where the entire cohort sort of had a question about something and just said, like, hey, we're questioning this. And she said, oh, absolutely, we'll work with you. We'll you know, it still all has to be done, but there's some flexibility if you're struggling with something, or support that's available to you, which I think is really important, because you're not alone. You have your classmates and you have the faculty and staff. And as Paula said, of Brown University, right? I mean, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, I agree with everybody before. I would agree with Jenny with the cadence. I believe our first class had like 3 assignments due every week, and then the second one had like 4. And when we say assignments, not all of them are hard. Some of them you're just responding to a situational dashboard conversation to kind of you know, engage your understanding of what the assignment is. But it has been meticulous for me to do, like Paul said, just think 1 week at a time. And I look at my dashboard on our software, which is Canvas, every week. Well, really, I look at it every day, and I just try to make sure I'm not, you know, I'm doing things that will say, okay, you need to read today. Today is a reading day. Okay, today is an assignment day. Today, you need to make sure you get some of this done or whatnot. And everybody is different. I think we have one classmate. She can complete everything a week ahead of time. And she's a consultant, so she kind of works in a space where she can do things at her own time and her pace. Some of us have, you know, you're getting it in right before midnight, but you know, we all get it done. Most of it is papers, and I can personally attest to my struggle with just writing. I you know, being a therapist, I write chicken scratch, so you know, nothing has to be complete sentences, and so when I have to go back and review my grammar, it's all important because it will improve your ability to write your critical challenge project, which is going to be, in most cases, something that could be publishable, something that can be referred to in you know, in your literature. So they all have to have that professional position in it. But I mean, if this is Brown University, and I would probably not think anything else. I would expect nothing else from this prestigious school. So you know, I've just had to curtail my certain set of freedoms and just try to pick and choose where I can make it most positive. So,
well, thank you all for that, because I think that provided a really good perspective. And I think just to emphasize sort of the theme here is that, you all have different work schedules and work-life balance requirements, and you have managed or are managing to figure out a cadence or something that works for you. And I think it's really important that as much as you guys are flexible and dynamic leaders, that for the purposes of the program, we try to keep to a really consistent cadence. So, at least within a course, so that you know what to expect and that you can manage that time within each course. So we know that's really important to students, and we really try to balance that and work with our faculty to do that. So thank you all for that. Let's talk to Jackie and Paul. What were some of the unexpected outcomes of the program, and what were some experiences during the program or that maybe were a surprise or an aha moment for you?
Paul, you want to go first?
Yeah, so two things. One is like you almost get a little emotional because we went through it during the pandemic, and we vividly remember we were in January of 2020. That was our second time we were there, and who knows, we had no idea what was to befall us. So, I was so proud of the faculty and just so uncharted waters. And obviously, we had a number of physicians in the cohort that were, treating these patients.
Yeah.
Went through some terrible, and what they were experiencing, and we only could suspect. They weren't very vocal about it, but they had, they were critical care physicians, so you could assume what they were dealing with, and the faculty came together and they adapted the program, and we wound up going another, I think, 2 months or so, Sandy, if I'm not mistaken, but we had no attrition. Everyone stayed there. We pulled together as a team a bit, what Jenny was referring to from the teamwork perspective, and we've really, the faculty pitched in, and then the students, we all held together, and I'll never forget that. What went from January till the following spring, and of course we all know what was going on. So what an unforeseen circumstance, but the way the Brown University rallied, it's just a testament to the individuals, the leadership there that, Jared was speaking a little bit about. So that was, I think, the biggest unexpected. And then on a personal note, I think what you will find is that it gets back a bit to the work and the expectations there is whether you know it or not, you're being pushed, and the work it will challenge you at times. There's no question about it. But what will happen is your confidence will grow at work, and it will come across, maybe not necessarily, you don't have to be overt about it, but the idea is that if you can challenge, or successfully navigate this program and excel in it, which you certainly all can, if you're accepted into it, there's no question. I think you'll find that there's some intrinsic value that when you're presenting to leadership, whatever your organization is, that you're confident almost internally that you can handle it. Like there's really not much they can throw at you, so to speak, that you cannot handle, because you're so well prepared, you're so well educated, and you've gone through a very, very important program at Brown. So I think you'd find some value there as well. So those are my thoughts.
So I had nothing anywhere as like life-changing like that. I was done before we had the pandemic. I think for me it was one, just seeing the diversity of experiences and backgrounds that were in the group. I felt that when I was done with the programs, it was 16 months, but I actually wrote and shared with folks that I got what I consider 4 years of working experience. I don't know how I came up with that number, but when I thought about it, if I was in my industry, because we tend to stay within our industry and we understand like inside out, we know our arena really well. And then when it gets difficult is when you have to work I'm in the payer industry, so I work for a health insurance company, and we get our side of the business. And then when we're working with physicians out in hospitals, then it becomes a little bit challenging because now you have to consider their point of view. But I got that in that cohort. I got that from hospitalists. I got that from folks who are working in the retail industry. And the dialogue, the discussions, the communication accelerated my learning so much that when I was done and I changed roles, I did get promoted and moved into a VP role. I moved into a role that's health transformation. So it's an innovative arm of the company. And the conversations there about how we pay for value, we had those conversations in class, how you reimburse so you can drive to outcomes. A lot of that I'm doing in my job today, I learned in that classroom. And so I actually had a chat with a member of my cohort about a year ago when I've been in my role now, gosh, it's a little over 2 years. And she said, oh my God, Jackie, they need to get you on a program to talk about this program because you are literally doing the job that the program trained you for. Literally, because what I learned is what I've applied. I'm no longer in pharmacy. I'm in an area where we're dealing with the issues of healthcare. How do we solve for access? How do we solve for quality? How do we solve for affordability? How do we solve for health equity? How do we solve for member and physician engagement? That is actually my job today. And I could not have done it without having gone through that program.
Excellent. And Jenny and Jared, one of the things that people have told me is that they have takeaways that they take back to their work environment from the beginning of the program. So I wonder if you could comment on any thoughts you have about, like, yeah, I'm already using this stuff.
Yeah, personally, a lot of the vocabulary, I have kind of alluded to that, like my hierarchy is very steep. Being a clinical manager, we don't use words like stakeholder. We don't use a lot of those terms of key components, things of that. And that may just be my profession, but I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that when you are not at that higher level of executive leadership, sometimes you just don't understand these things. And being able to put together presentations for my leadership already and being able to point out stakeholders, point out a strategy, process improvement. I mean, that's just really one class that I can speak to right now. Those are the different things that we can actually do. We've also to discuss different things like the status of the healthcare system and how our company is kind of influenced or can be transformed, as Jackie alluded to. So I think those are like the big things that I'm just purposefully using, because these are what the leaders are using. These are what the executive people are using. They're not speaking on low terms day-to-day functions. A lot of times they're thinking of the movement of large organizations. They're talking about how can we affect things when a pandemic does happen. How can we affect things when we need to transform patient morale? I mean, employee morale, things of all those different things. Those are being heavily influenced, and I've basically already started using that from February, right after the in-person session. So I think it's been vital.
Jenny, anything to add there?
I was just going to say that one unexpected thing is that I've learned a lot more about Rhode Island than I ever expected to learn, which is all good.
Rhode Island.
Because I'm from Maryland, DC, and haven't spent a lot of time in Rhode Island, but it is a very special place, and Brown is a big part of making it special, as I've learned. So that's obviously on a levity side, but I would say that, being a provider through the pandemic and having cared for such an extraordinary number of COVID patients, left us in a pretty dark moment. And I would say that one of the things that's sort of been unexpected and that I've come back to the organization is just gratitude. Really grateful for what I'm part of, because I've had such a diverse group of cohort members who have had such a varied experience in terms of support or their leadership throughout the pandemic, that it just has made me realize, while we all get frustrated in moments of challenge and it becomes sometimes hard to come through, that I'm really just grateful for how our leaders manage the moment. And so kind of a different angle, I would say, but absolutely gratitude. And I would just also say that I think in any experience you get out of it what you put into it. And I think that, being open to cohort members, being open, we started sort of mid Omicron surge. So we were in session, but we were distanced and masked. And so I think just being open to whatever that moment brings and being flexible, as the staff certainly is. So I think being open to all the different ways that it might throw you a curveball, and just being a good partner with the school to let them know how the experience is for you as the student, I think is important.
Awesome. You all gave some really great insights. Let's wrap up before we go to Q&A, but from the audience, if you will. What advice would you give to prospective students? Who would like to start?
I guess I can go.
Okay.
Being young in the tenure, I could say come in with a very strong mindset to change what you want to change. A lot of us have come in with, as we kind of all talked about, our backgrounds, PT, therapy, pharma, business, wherever you're coming from. We all are educated. We're all very intelligent. But a lot of us have this mindset to change and make healthcare better. And I think this program gives you a good insight on how you can bring that to light. And it may be something grand. It may just be like, I want to change my company's thinking of that. And that may be very hard, but there's a way to operate that this program is able to break down a lot of things, and you will be able to approach leadership or bring in new ideas. And I think, just come in with a strong mindset of changing something or making something better, and holding that will make you very focused for this program.
Great. How about you, Paul? What would you tell a prospective student?
There's so much it's such a privilege. I can tell you personally, there's from a professional standpoint, was the highlight of my career. Even the promotion that I alluded to earlier, but just graduating from such an esteemed university as Brown, it's a really big deal. And so I would think, what I would say to prospective students, it will be a change for you, like in a positive manner. There's no question about it. And where you take it is certainly up to you, but it's something that's very, very special. Outside of your career, I think the fact that, I allude back, close out with those walking through those gates, and they did arrange that for us, in June of last year. But that was something that will live with me forever. Like, that's a special, special moment that outside of any promotion or, or what have you at work, but that is something. And when you graduate, you get the diploma in Latin. And then I think I'm in the 253rd or 54th class, but you're in that folder, your name's in there, like with all these others, and it's something very special. So it's well worth it, and just certainly you'll enhance your skill set, no question about it. But there's something deeper, I think, certainly that I found in my experience, and I'm so proud of it. I'm a big runner, and I'm always wearing my Brown T-shirt all over the world, and so it means a lot to me. So anyway, but I think you'd find it something very, very special, in addition to all of the learnings that Jenny and Jackie and Jared alluded to. So that's my thought.
All right, Jenny, what about you? Advice to prospective students thinking about the program?
I would say if you have enough interest that you've logged on to listen to the webinar, you should just do it. Borrowing from Nike, because the truth of the matter is healthcare needs you. We need smart, creative minds looking to transform healthcare, and Brown's program is uniquely tailored to that specific missions and vision. So I think that if you're here, you should not pause. You should go for it, and you will have partners along the way that will help you in the process of applying, in the process of getting more information, and hopefully if you are accepted in the process of being a student. So go for it. That would be my counsel.
Excellent. And Jackie, give you a chance to answer that one.
Yeah, so for me, what I recommend is it is possible, right? We have folks who have young kids who are working demanding jobs who are still able to plan this and get it done. So that's not an obstacle. There is so much richness to what you'll learn. It is not very frequent that you get to work in the course of your day job. that you get to walk across the aisle with all the important stakeholders. Those opportunities are few and far in between. And so you find that you have a lot of experience dealing with the issues with the key stakeholders, because they're represented in your cohort. There's some pretty intense conversations when you're having those conversations from this different points of view, but it helps you with what happens in real life. So definitely a ton of value. When I was in the program, I made sure that every senior leader in my organization knew that I was in the program. Everybody, including my CEO, knew my CEO. When I had project assignments that required us to talk to a more senior person in the organization, I went all the way to the top. I interviewed our chief information officer, our chief operating officer, and I worked for a $21 billion annual revenue company. So I made sure they knew what I was working with, so that it showed I'm ready for whatever's next. I understand a lot more than you think, because sometimes you're put in a bucket, like, oh, this is the role you're in, and so that's all you know. But you're getting exposed to so much that it's worth letting other people know that, so you can have the opportunity to apply some of those skills you're learning in a role or in an assignment that's not within the course of your job description, and prepares you for that next step. A lot of folks also change jobs in the course of the program. There were several in my crew who took, I think by the time we were done, they had been in 3 jobs. I mean, they just took that knowledge and just kept applying. And that's not necessary for everybody. I changed roles as we started the program, and then it took me a while to change after that. But I had opportunity to learn, grow, set up my own team from scratch, applying everything I was learning from Brown, and set up a really cool team that achieved a lot before I moved on 2 years ago into a different role. It's definitely worth it, definitely.
Thank you all. Really, really great insights, and I appreciate that, and appreciate you taking the time. So I'm going to ask Susan Coogan, who, as Jenny alluded to, is one of our amazing staff here at Brown that helps people through the application process. And Susan's been checking the Q&A section. So if you have questions for the panel, please type that into the Q&A, and Susan's going to let us know what people would like to know.
Great, thank you, Sandy. Yes, well, the first question was, one of our viewers wants to know if we could flesh out the critical challenge structure, and how did it all work really from?
Well, I'll give a little bit of an overview and then open it up. So it has evolved over the years. We like to practice continuous improvement here as well. But we ask students to come into the program with an idea of what topic or what project they think they want to work on. And from there, you are assigned an advisor, and that advisor works with you throughout the course of the program. You spend the first term really fleshing out what is the nature of the problem and what have people attempted as solutions, and where does your proposed solution fit into that context. And you write a paper that brings that all together in terms of the research you've done, the people you've talked to, perhaps organization data that you've gathered, to really flesh out what does this project look like. From there, we start to move towards, okay, what are the steps and project steps that you need to work on to accomplish that objective. And ultimately, you come out at the end of the program with 2 things. One is a real sort of academic reflection on how all of the coursework applies to the challenge that you're facing, and a reflection on your leadership journey throughout the program, how you've grown. Some of our the folks on the panel have alluded to that growth. And the other component is a presentation and to a panel of colleagues that you want to know about your project, and as well as some sort of externally facing document. So it's not always that you're going to go out into the world and present a PowerPoint deck. Sometimes you have to provide something in writing, like a business case or a white paper, whatever it might be. So we want students to have the experience of having both of those components to their critical challenge project. So I'm happy to have the panel kind of weigh in on the value of the critical challenge project and the structure that you found and how it helped you.
Yeah, I can take it, Craig. It was it's really quite a interesting journey with, and again, you have the instructor with you or your advisor, and I found that they were my particular advisor was just really thought provoking. Like, her questions were so well thought through, and just it really challenged me to get to the next level with my project. And it was, you know, she would challenge me thinking things from a different angle that I hadn't obviously considered. And so it was very valuable. And you know, and you know, it was good that it was throughout the entire course too. So you continue to make progress. There was various check-ins that you had with your advisor, as well as some of the written assignments as you went along the way. So it wasn't like you waited to the very end too, as Sandy had alluded to. So, what was most enriching about the experience was working with such an esteemed advisor. In my case, I really found that extraordinarily fruitful. And you know, you have the one-on-one time. I actually went down before the pandemic and met with my advisor in her office several times, and it was just very helpful. So a very good experience. Again, sort of the enrichment as well too that you get at Brown. So nice program.
So I was just taking a peek at the question there, and it's yes, it's a capstone. It's a 4-credit requirement of the program to complete the program. But since you are all working professionals, we know that you don't want to go through a master's program and come out with a thesis document that gets dusty sitting on the shelf. You would much rather be doing things. And so it's a chance for you to apply the knowledge that you're gaining to a real world challenge and come out with deliverables that are really applicable to that sort of applied project and solving that issue that you're focusing on, that you're working on. So yes, it's a capstone, but it's an applied capstone. All right, Susan, what's next?
Yes, another question was, does this program prepare you to be a global healthcare leader? In other words, do you feel better equipped to transform healthcare even in spaces beyond the United States?
So I would say yes. While the majority of our students are US based, we have a number of students that have international roles as well, or are students from other countries. What I would emphasize is that the leadership skills, knowledge and process orientation of the various courses that you go through, that you obtain that global perspective in terms of being able to apply the knowledge in any healthcare setting that you are exposed to or working on. We had one gentleman in a pharma company, and his whole critical challenge project was on rolling out and getting the approvals for rolling out a new medication in the European market, and dealing with the EU countries and all of their variety of approval processes. So the work that he did in the program was really helped him guide his work in an international market. So
Yeah, Sandy,
I don't know if any of you, maybe Paul, you could comment on that.
Because it was so we actually had in the first session or two, we had some students from the Netherlands come over as well, and you may recall they actually studied. We shared their class. Their instructor presented to us about the healthcare system in the Netherlands, particularly, and also the EU in general. So yeah, there was definitely that slant from a global perspective on there in the program. It was nice to see that. That was a very nice part of the program that I recall. Yep.
Great.
And I like to think of myself as a global healthcare leader. So this is my third country, third continent, and third. So I had practiced in 3 different countries before. Well, the U.S. being my third, and there were programs that taught you within health policy, I think, about other countries' healthcare systems. So you weren't in isolation thinking only about the United States. So I would say that in the last few years, as I've thought as my kids are getting older, I have thought, and I live in the UK, and I was born in the UK, I have thought about the possibility of going back to the UK. It's been almost 30 years, but there are roles that I could take there, that I could apply what I've learned here, my 30-year-old knowledge of the NHS healthcare system and other healthcare systems across the globe to be a global leader in that space as well. So definitely the answer is yes to that.
Great, thank you. Susan, any other questions?
Well, I think the last one was that came in was wondering what your networking opportunities have been like since you started the program. And are you still in close contact with your cohort members?
So I am. I do actually have a small group. There are 4 of us, and we meet virtually every month or thereabouts. When I was done with the program, I actually joined the faculty. So I was a teaching associate for one of the courses within the program for 3 years. So my network is very broad. It's not just my cohort, it's multiple cohorts. I was in cohort 3, and I have friends from cohort 4, 5, and I think 6. I also met somebody from cohort 2, and that my network is really broad in that respect. And it's been very, very helpful. And then of course I had the opportunity to go back and meet faculty. And I did actually become one of the advisory council for a program that was set up by the dean. It's an advisory council to work on eliminating anti-Black racism. And so myself and another group of somebody from the MHL program, as well as the other programs within the School of Professional Services, formed this 7-member panel. And I was on campus during the recent commencement, meeting a whole lot more people. So my network, I'm in California, so I'm all the way on the West Coast, but my network on the East Coast has gotten very, very big.
Great perspective, thank you. Jenny or Jared, do you want to comment on the sort of cohort vibe and how you think that'll carry you forward in the future?
Sure. Sorry, my computer froze, but yeah, our cohort is actually fairly cohesive. We all get along fairly well. I mean, and I think a lot of us, based on communications and just the ability of technology through chat and text message. I even told Jenny last week when we were in session that my last group met every week virtually, just because, and she was like, "Wow, that's a lot." And I was like, "Yeah, we just kept meeting." So we have great, vast connections with each other, and you get that, as Jackie said, with the faculty and some of the speakers you come in. I think we had 2 speakers. We had 2 panels last week. I think I'm actually thinking we had 3 panels this week. Okay, and then I connected with at least 2 people off of those. So and it's just based off of some of the stuff that they communicate, some of their networking, and how I can apply it to my CCP. I mean, it is very vast. I mean, it is, and it's quick. So and everybody's really professional, really receptive, really quick. So it's a great opportunity. I would, as Jenny said before, if you're on this, it's probably best to pull the trigger.
Paul,
I would just say, I think Jackie probably has the better, I mean, that's a great comprehensive and she has more time from it. But certainly, as Jared said, our cohort has been wonderful thus far. But I would also say that the faculty and staff have been incredible too. And you kind of learn a little bit each time you go or throughout the sessions of your different courses. For instance, during this last in residence, we had someone from the alumni office come and talk to us about what it means to be a Brown University alumni. And so that was really interesting. So, I mean, they are consciously making you part of the community, even though some aspect of it is virtual when you are on campus. And Sandy's been really open to suggestions about how to make us feel even more integrated into campus when we're there. So I would just say, so far, it looks like it's going to be wonderful. And it sounds like Jackie's living proof.
Exactly. Paul, do you have any last comments about that?
Yeah, just echo. We our cohort's very close. We still, we text like inevitably a wedding or something comes up or whatever, and we forge that bond over some of the challenging circumstances I spoke to earlier. But what a terrific group all over the world, or not the world, but mostly the United States. But California and Texas and all over. But it's you'll keep those relationships going long after the program is concluded because of what you've all gone through. So, but it's very special. So,
yeah, I have definitely had students tell me that they always feel like they have someone in the cohort that if they're dealing with a challenge and they want to know another stakeholder's point of view, they have someone in their cohort that they can call and say, because they're have a personal networked relationship with, and they can say, hey, I'm dealing with this issue. What's your perspective from your side of the world there? So they've really found that to be very powerful networking connection. So I want to thank all of our panelists for joining today. It was a really great session, and I hope that our participants were able to get their questions answered. Look forward to seeing all of you again. And a reminder that tonight we have the first of our Lessons in Leadership series. And so invite you all to join us for that. Henry Browning and another alum, Kelly Doyle, will be joining us to talk about kind of new leadership lessons in the post-COVID world. What does leadership look like? So I hope you will all join us for that tonight. And thank you for joining today.